distinguished religious leaders, ladies, gentlemen, and children. Online Buddhist Temple presents series of 4 meditation and Dhamma discussions. Saturday, October 17th is the second session on benefits of mindfulness and uh, psychotherapy with Bhante Kovida, who is a traveling Buddhist monk who is currently visiting Ottawa, the capital city of Canada. Saturday, October 24th and 31st, Nature of Fear and COVID-19 with Bhante Kovida. On behalf of the members of the Buddhist Embassy, I extend a warm welcome to you all. We appreciate you are taking time out from your busy schedules to join us today. So we will be announcing one of the events coming on the November 21st. It's about a minute. Enjoy the session. A group of Sri Lankan bhikkhunis traveled to China in the early 5th century to introduce bhikkhuni ordination. It is clearly recorded in the Chinese Buddhist transcripts, the biography of nuns. The Upasampada tradition, women were ordained as bhikkhuni. There is evidence that the bhikkhuni order continued till this date without any interruption.
This is a unique meditation practice, or for those who are having difficulty focusing their minds from too much thinking or from sleepiness. And it goes like this. So you can do this practice first with your eyes open and then with your eyes closed. So there is the awareness of each movement of the hand and when the hand touches the body. You're aware of each touch sensation. So this is a very easy way to focus the mind in the present moment. And when our mindfulness becomes very clear, we're able to observe thoughts very clearly, very objectively, and let them go. Mental, emotional conflict and suffering. So, hello everyone.
Hello.
And yes. So for those who did not join us last Saturday, I'll just do the reading again on the benefits of mindfulness. Mindfulness is a skillful way of relating to and connecting to life and daily experience. It is paying attention on purpose in the present moment and in a non-judgmental way. It is a way of being, and it takes practice. It is calm attention to what is happening from moment to moment without discrimination or criticism. It is the observing power of the mind that sees without the filter of desire or aversion, liking or disliking, or delusional reaction. It is therefore a wholesome way of seeing what is happening in the present moment. Mindful breathing brings the mind home to the body. You begin to experience calmness, a sense of well-being and quiet joy. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. This helps our concentration and focus, and we begin to appreciate the fact of being alive instead of being distracted and confused by compulsive thinking. Mindful breathing can help us to stop thinking about the past with regret and guilt, and stop thinking about the future with anxiety, fear, and uncertainty. We're able to experience tranquility and stillness, which is most beneficial and precious in our busy and stressful lives. So let us just do some few minutes of mindful breathing. And for those who are new to mindful breathing practice, the focus is on the chest, stomach area, the rising, falling sensation. And to help focus the mind, as you breathe in, just say in your mind in. As you breathe out, say in your mind out. And when the mind wanders away, which is very natural, just be aware of it and gently return to in, out, in, out. So in this practice, we're very patient with the wandering mind. I mentioned last Saturday that there's a very useful technique that I often use, and it's called the noting method. Some of you are aware of it. And as you know, the mind easily creates stories, many stories. Sometimes it can be little dramas, worries, some fears, so many scenarios. And when we're not mindful, these mind-created stories, mini dramas, scenarios, they seem so real, so permanent. But actually they are not. It's the power of delusion, thoughts and images. But when we apply mindfulness, the technique that I find that most useful is just saying, thinking, thinking, thinking. And sometimes I'll even add, it's only thinking, thinking, thinking. And then you come back to present moment, mindfulness. Because when you do that, it helps us to get out of the story, the mind-created stories, dramas, fears, and so on. And you realize that they're only thoughts. It helps you to get out of the contents of those thoughts and images that are creating these stories. They're very useful. They're only thoughts. And of course, we see more and more that thoughts are only temporary mental objects, mental conditions. They come and go. And they're not solid. They're not solid reality. It only seems that way when we don't have mindfulness. And as our mindfulness becomes stronger, more firm, more clear, then we begin to see the empty nature of thoughts and images. Now I'll just continue this reading. Mindful walking helps us to be in the present moment, and we begin to appreciate the environment. We can stop and smell the roses and experience the joy of just being alive. And I'm sure this past few months, whenever you're able to go outside, how wonderful it was just to experience nature in the present moment. The leaves, the flowers, the trees, for the smell of flowers, the birds, the sky in the clouds, or the clouds in the sky. And you notice that when you look at the sky, that your mind becomes more spacious. You open the mind to more space, because awareness by nature is spacious. But initially we don't see that because we're always, constantly thinking. And when the mind is thinking, there is no space. And you find that when you're thinking too much about something, obsessing about something, the mind literally contracts. It contracts. And you can actually experience viscerally this contraction of the mind when we're thinking too much about something. It's just the nature of the obsessive mind, the worrying mind. So it's very, very useful when we can look at the sky. Let's open the mind to that spaciousness. So that spaciousness really is our, you can say it is our original mind, spacious awareness. Mindful eating in silence is a peaceful activity, and we can appreciate the food much more. When we're eating and talking, what we're talking about becomes more important than the food. The food becomes a secondary thing. Mindful cleaning, cooking, and washing helps us to enjoy doing these activities instead of being in a hurry to finish them so that we can do other things. Present moment, wonderful moment. With mindfulness and calm focus, we can deal with our own
mental states, or anxiety, fear, and worry, frustration, irritation, anger, resentment, sadness, and sorrow. We can embrace our mental emotional upset and take care of it with compassion, kind acceptance, and patience. Mindfulness has the power to heal past traumas and conflicts because it's a state of non-duality. And so one is able to be objective and see things as they are without identifying with them and let them go. Mindfulness also helps us not to react to unpleasant words and situations and not to take things so personally. A great deal of our mental energy is caught up in habitual reactions. It is our reactions which make us burn out, which throws us off balance and cause us suffering and discontent, dis-ease. Things get better in our lives when we react less and less. We can remain calm and patient, wise, strong, and secure. Then we can respond in a beneficial way and be helpful to others. So with mindfulness, we can appreciate the difference between reacting and responding. Our basic problem in life is that we take things too personally, even things that are not directly related to us. This is an aspect of ignorance and delusion. Mindfulness is much more than you think. Our minds are not determined by what happens to us, but by how we react to what happens. Not by what life brings to us, but by our attitude we bring to life. The world is as it is. Life is constantly changing and uncertain. A calm and positive attitude causes a chain reaction of positive thoughts, events, and outcomes. It is a catalyst, a spark that creates extraordinary and surprising results. Events do not cause us suffering. They may cause us physical discomfort or some inconvenience and delay, or a change in our lifestyle, as in our present pandemic. It is our mental emotional reaction to those events that cause us suffering, upset, anger, frustration, anxiety, and despair. Without mindfulness, we are enslaved and deluded by mental activity, by our psychological process, by too much thinking. This is a source of dukkha, mental emotional disturbance. We believe that to follow our impulses and to satisfy our desires and expectations is freedom. This is an illusion. In fact, we're slaves to craving, clinging, frustration, fear, and despair. In mindfulness, one is not only restful, calm, and content, but alert and awake. Meditation is not an evasion or escape. It is a clear and serene encounter with reality. The secret of life is revealed when we're living in harmony with the changes and motions of life, when we are not constantly struggling to change what is. Patience and acceptance is the key to peace, compassion, wisdom, and freedom. With mindfulness, we can skillfully deal with our thoughts and emotions. With objective awareness of our mental landscape, we can see thoughts as just thoughts, thinking, thinking, thinking. We can see feelings as just feelings, moods and emotions as just moods and emotions. We can see and understand their impermanent, changing, and uncertain nature, and can therefore let them go, coming back to present moment awareness, thus freeing the mind of mental emotional suffering and dis-ease. I just read you this very wise saying. The world is in an anxious, fearful, frustrated, and confused state. The politicians and news media people are also anxious, fearful, and confused. The mind changes from liking to disliking, from craving to aversion, from anxiety to frustration with the agitation of the world. If we can learn to make the mind still, calm, and silent, it will be the greatest help to the world. There are some things we cannot control, but we can control how we respond to the current pandemic situation. With mindfulness, we can come back to present moment and keep calm and patient. So mindfulness is something very beneficial. It can really help us to live more calmly, more patiently, more wisely amidst difficulties and challenges. And I think this pandemic has been one of our greatest challenges so far in life. As you know, his name has just slipped me, but he gave a talk. You know, the Microsoft inventor. He gave a talk 5 years ago on TED about the pandemic. He was predicting another pandemic, but of course nobody believed him. And I think as humans, we only believe things when they happen. So this is what we're facing. So it is really how we deal with the present situation, because that we can control. How we deal, how we respond, how we react to things. And the Buddha once gave a very radical teaching. He said, when you see, just see. When you hear, just hear. When you think, just think. When you know, just know. It sounds very simple, but as you know, it's very challenging, very difficult, because by habit, we're conditioned to be reacting all the time. So it does take practice, how not to react, how to keep mindful. But with practice, we begin to see the freedom of it, how not to react, especially to unpleasant situations, unpleasant work. Say when you're dealing with co-workers or just with people in general, how not to react to their unpleasantness or their criticisms. Because I think most of us, we don't like to be criticized. But in my own experience, I find that when people can offer constructive criticism, it's a good opportunity for me to learn, to accept, and to listen, with humility. But of course, because we have fear, we have anxiety, and we have some insecurity, we're not open to criticism. And of course, there's a difference between, just malicious criticism and constructive criticism. So I think this is one of the things that we can learn, how to be open to constructive criticism. Yes, we mentioned last week that we're conditioned to not only to react to things, to situations, but we're conditioned to identify with things. We identify with physical things, my body, other people, friends, family, my material possessions, and so on. Of course, my work, my profession, my hobbies, my likes, my dislikes, my religion or my spiritual path, and so on, and so on. And we also identify with our mental emotional states. And this is why we tend to take things so personally, because it's a part of our conditioning. So in mindfulness practice, we learn how to objectify mental emotional states. Because one of the miracles of mindfulness is that it gives us that ability to see things objectively, because it's a state of non-duality, meaning there is no I, no self that is being aware, that's being mindful. There's only that energy of mindfulness, of attention. Initially, we don't see this because, habitually we're always saying, I'm seeing something, I'm thinking something, I'm smelling this, I'm tasting, and so on. So this conditioning of duality starts very early in childhood, and it starts very innocently because we use language, we learn. For example, when a child says, I like this or I don't like that, that's already conditioning of duality. The I liking something or I not liking something, or I wanting something or I don't want something. We create a duality, meaning subject and object. And the I is always the subject. So likewise, we create duality when we identify with the sense experience. I'm seeing something, hearing, smelling, tasting, and I'm thinking something. So we believe that there's a center of experience, this me who is seeing, who is tasting, smelling, touching, and of course, who is thinking. And that's why the conditioning is so deep rooted. Now, initially, we start to learn, we use the label I for communication. But then when we start to identify with this sense experience, the I, the me, the center becomes more deep rooted. And only through mindfulness that we begin to see this. And this was one of the insights of the Buddha. You realize that the senses are actually sensing by themselves. They're just happening. And if you're very mindful, you can see this. When you look at something, the sense experience, seeing, is something natural. If your eyes are healthy, seeing consciousness arises naturally. Just like, when you're eating something, tasting arises naturally. And of course, most of the time, we're thinking all the time, sometimes compulsively. And most of them, we're not even aware that we're thinking. The mind is just thinking. And then we're caught up in all the, mind-created stories, dramas, worries, fears, desires, disappointments, and so on. So in mindfulness practice, we can see things objectively, because it is that state of non-duality, that energy of attention. For example, say fear arises, just breathe mindfully and you just say, there is fear, or there's a state of fear. There's a state of anxiety. There's a state of desire. There's a state of frustration. Very useful. And you begin to see it's very different. There's a big difference in saying, I am angry and there is anger. Or I'm afraid, I'm scared, and there is fear, there is a state of fear. Or, I'm so frustrated. Or there is a state of frustration. And you remind yourself, this too shall pass. It's only a temporary mental state, a changing condition of the mind. And with more practice, we begin to see the truth of this, and we're able to let go of these mental, emotional states more easily. And you begin to see the process, that life is actually a process. And we're actually a process of body and mind. And in the Pali language, some of you are familiar, it's rupa and nama, physical and mental process or phenomena. And we're alive because we're a process. But we tend to overlook this fact that we're a process because we're social creatures, and we're always using language, of course, labels, I, you, he, she, and names, of course. So we tend to see each other as personalities, as selves. But that is just our social world. But when you look a bit deeper, you see the fact of body and mind. For example, say if you're doing mindful breathing, the physical sensation of the breath, that is the body, it's a rupa, and the awareness of the sensation, the breathing sensation, is mind, mental process. You see body and mind, that's all. And say if you're doing mindful walking, the feet moving and touching, that is the physical process, rupa, and the awareness of the feet moving and stepping is mind, mental process. Again, there's only body and mind. And if you're doing the dynamic hand movements, you can see it very clearly. The hands moving and touching, that's a physical process, rupa, and the awareness of the hands moving and touching is the mind, mental process. You see, again, only body and mind, that's all. No I, no you, no me, no self. Just body and mind. It's very profound, but it's also very direct. And of course, if you're on a retreat, where you're very calm, you're very present, you can see this very clearly in everything that you do. Whether you're cleaning, washing, eating, you can see the physical and mental process. That's all. Rupa and Nama. So this reflection is one of the easy ways of understanding the truth of non-self, anatta, no permanent self. So we do have a self, but it's only conditioning. We'll explore this more next week when we reflect on the nature of fear and so on. And of course, when we reflect on the body, you see that we're also conditioned to identify very strongly with this body, as you know. And every time you look in the mirror, you identify with that image. You think that image is who you are. And half the time we're not pleased with that image. But you'll be happy to know that that image you see in the mirror is not who you really are. And as you know, the image that you see in the mirror is always changing. Some days you look in the mirror and say, oh, today, I'm not so bad. I'm not looking too bad. I'll never be a fashion model, but I'm okay. But then 2 days later, you look in the mirror and say, oh my God, I look awful. I look terrible. And a good example of this, I'm sure you've had this experience, where say, one day you're just feeling lousy, you're feeling rotten. and you happen to meet a friend, and the first thing the friend says, "Oh, you're looking so wonderful. You're looking so lovely today." And it's like, what the hell are you talking about? Because, what you're experiencing has nothing to do with the image, what we call the public image. Very interesting. And as you know, you could be, in a room of many people. You can look around and you can see all their faces. You can see all the faces in the room. But there's one face you cannot see, right? That's right. Because that face is only a public image. It's a very interesting reflection. So one of the important teachings of the Dhamma is that when we reflect on the body, we begin to see the truth of non-self, anatta. For example, if you tell the body, not to get sick, does the body listen to us? It doesn't listen. If we tell the body not to get hungry, not to get tired, not to go to the washroom, not to age, and so on, the body does these things because it follows its own natural laws. So it really belongs to the changing conditions of nature. It is non-self, anatta. So this is a good reflection. The Buddha, one of the very last teaching he gave before he passed away was on the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Because the monks who are mature in their practice, they remain calm, very peaceful. They could accept that the Buddha was going to pass away. But those who are more, immature in their practice, in their Dhamma understanding, were very upset, crying, and they pleaded with the Buddha not to die, not to leave them. Because that's the nature of emotional attachment, isn't it? And they said, after you're gone, we'll have no teacher. How can we manage without you? Which is something very natural in human attachment. So the Buddha said you have to be an island unto yourself. You have to be a light unto yourself. You have to be more self-reliant. And they said, but how can we do that? And then he reminded them of the teaching of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Mindfulness of the body in daily activity, mindfulness of sensations in the body, mindfulness of mental states, including emotions, feelings, emotions, and so on, and mindfulness of mental objects, thoughts, ideas, concepts, images, and so on. He said, when we practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness, we become an island unto ourselves, a light unto ourselves. We can be more self-reliant. And as you know, this pandemic is actually a good opportunity for us to become more self-reliant, to really practice and to really reflect on who we really are at a deeper level. And also, you find that this pandemic has given us the opportunity to really come to terms with our basic aloneness, because we are alone, whether we like it or not. As the saying goes, we're born alone and we die alone. It's just a fact. And as you know, when you're hungry, no one can eat for you. Even if your best friend or your partner, offers to eat for you, it doesn't work that way, right? You have to eat yourself. It's like when you're tired, nobody can rest for you. And of course, if you have to go to the washroom, no one can go for you. It's that basic fact of life, that basic aloneness. But with practice, we begin to come to terms with our basic aloneness, and we begin to enjoy just being alone, which is different from loneliness, right? Because loneliness is when we escape the fact that we're alone, and we crave company or stimulation or entertainment. So then we suffer from loneliness. And again, if loneliness happened to arise, you apply mindfulness. There is loneliness. There's a state of loneliness. And you remind yourself it's only a temporary mental state, a changing condition of the mind. And you come back to present moment mindfulness, and as the mind becomes more calm, more focused, you see that loneliness goes away. It goes away. The same with boredom. And boredom is a very good subject to deal with. And as you know, many monks experience boredom sometimes. And when I was a monk in Sri Lanka, I didn't have internet. You know, I couldn't watch YouTube or send emails, but I could write letters. And as you know, initially, when boredom arises, automatically we identify with boredom. You know, I'm bored. And when we identify with boredom, this I naturally wants to escape boredom. And there's so many ways we can escape boredom. But again, if we apply mindfulness, we objectify that state of boredom. Breathe mindfully. You need to say, there is boredom, or there's a state of boredom. Same with frustration, there's a state of frustration. And you remind yourself, this too shall pass. It's only a temporary mental state, a changing condition of the mind. And what I found interesting in my own practice is that it gave me the opportunity also to really experience boredom as it is, instead of identifying with it and escaping from it. Just to experience the texture of boredom. What is this texture? What does it really feel like? And I found it so interesting when I could really experience the texture of boredom, what it really feels like. And because it was such an interesting observation, I was no longer bored. It was interesting to observe the texture, the actual experience of boredom. So it's a very good subject to experiment with. Very interesting. The same with frustration. What does it really feel like? The actual feeling. And the same with fear also. Just observing fear as it is, just what the body is experiencing with fear. And then there's, how do you say, Thich Nhat Hanh has a very pleasant way, delightful way of dealing with fear or mental states, where you become friends with fear. Breathing in, I know there's fear in me. Breathing out, I smile. You smile at the fear. It's a very wonderful practice. Breathing in, I know there's frustration in me. Breathing out, I smile. Breathing in, I know there's even craving in me. Breathing out, I smile. And then you remind yourself, this too shall pass. It's only a temporary mental state. And it's a very beneficial practice because that mindful breathing, it's a very wholesome state of mind. It's a smile of metta, of loving kindness and acceptance. Because you're not judging that mental state. You just accept it as it is with kindness. So that is a very beneficial way of making friends with fear, with anxiety, with frustration, with boredom, and so on. And as you know, when you smile, it feels good, doesn't it? It's a very wholesome state of mind. And it helps us to relax. And if you can laugh, even better. This is why I keep reminding people to look at the laughing yoga, laughing yoga on YouTube. You get groups of Indians just laughing and laughing and laughing. It's a very good therapy. You know the old saying, laughter is the best medicine. It is true. But if you can't laugh, you can breathe and smile. And as you know, in the Qigong, there's also the laughing Qigong also. So for those who have not done the Qigong practice, the link is just Qigong with Bhante Kovida on YouTube. Qigong with Bhante Kovida. Chigong. And it's very simple and it's very easy to follow. And it's good for stress, emotional stress, frustration, anxiety, depression, and so on. Oh, I see where I didn't look at the time. Now, at this time, are there any questions? And you can always send a question via email. Very easy, no problem. I think, unless you have a question, we can end with mindful chanting. I mentioned this last Saturday. And the chanting that I like to do, it's the mantra from the Heart Sutra. Some of you know this sutta, this mantra. It's wonderful. And it's very simple, very easy. And you can really focus the mind, especially, when you're having disturbing thoughts, any kind of disturbing thoughts, or negative thoughts, anxious thoughts, and so on. And as you know, the Heart Sutra, it's very profound. It's based on the teaching of non-self and emptiness. And the mantra goes like this: Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, Bodhi swaha. Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, Bodhi swaha. And the meaning is going beyond, going well beyond the world of dukkha, mental, emotional suffering, ignorance and delusion, craving and attachment, aversion and ill will. And bodhisvaha means rejoice in the freedom, bliss, and peace of awakening. So we can do this together, or you can just listen. Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhisvaha. 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 Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate
Bodhi Swaha
Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate
Bodhi
Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Gate Gate Paragate
Parasamgate Bodhi Swaha
Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Gate Gate Paragate
Parasamgate Bodhi Swaha
Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Gate Gate Paragate
Parasamgate Bodhi
Gate Gate Paragate
Parasamgate Bodhi Gate
Gate
Parasamgate
Paragate And we mentioned also last Saturday, the practice of loving kindness is very, very beneficial. Not only for conflicts, negativity, and so on, but when we're having a guilt, because guilt is really a universal conflict that many people have. And when we make mistakes, it's important that we forgive ourselves for being human, because we're not perfect, and as human beings we all make mistakes, even famous people, even famous teachers also, because we're human. But again, because of our social conditioning, we think we ought to be perfect, we should be perfect, but it's only a concept. The idea of perfection is only a concept. So you can say that it's perfect and natural to make mistakes. So when there's guilt, the practice of loving kindness is very beneficial, because we replace those negative judgmental thoughts with kind, positive thoughts. May I be well, happy, and peaceful. May I be free from fear, conflict, and delusion. May all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May all beings be free from fear, conflict, and delusion. Because guilt is an aspect of fear. So the negativity, and of course we create a negative image when we are feeling guilt. I'm so terrible, I'm awful, I'm crazy, I'm so stupid, why did I do that, why did I say that, etc., etc. So that negativity, that negative image, naturally creates fear. So may you all be well, happy, and peaceful.